All right, everyone, good morning. I hope that you're doing well. Today, we're really changing things up. Um, Up until now, everything, all the poetry that we've been writing is what we'll call open form. That is to say, you can rhyme whenever you want to. The lines can be any length you want them to. You can use metaphors, similes, all that, however you want. And that's great, and a lot of wonderful poetry is done that way. But there's another type of poetry that we really have barely talked about at all, and that's what is called closed form poetry. And that's what we're going to be working on for the next few days. So you're going to need a couple pieces of paper. You're going to need this pink sheet of examples, and you'll need this white sheet for drafting. Okay, so make sure you have those out on your desk, please. So closed form poetry is all about structure. So instead of kind of an open format where you can just write whatever kind of comes to mind, a closed form poem is really going to have a set pattern, and that can be lots of different things. Sometimes it has to do with the rhymes, so the poem will follow a really kind of set rhyming pattern, and your job is to make sure that you write lines that follow that rhyming pattern. Sometimes it's rhythm. A lot of closed form poetry is written with specific rhythm. Now, I'm not I'm not going to ask you to scan everything out and have the rhythm perfect, but it's something to be thinking about. And I would like you to shoot 4 lines that are approximately the same number of syllables. Okay, so getting in that habit of syllable counting at the very least. And number 3, the third thing that sometimes comes up in closed form poems is repetition, which isn't something we've formally talked about, but can be a really big part of poetry. So you're going to write 3 different closed form poems over the next 3 days. And I'm going to ask you to do the first one today. So the first closed form poem that we're going to write it's called a ghazal. A ghazal is a ghazal is a really ancient type of poetry. It originally comes from the Middle East, and it's made out of a bunch of short stanzas. All the stanzas in a ghazal are 2 lines long, and so they're called couplets. So a couplet is a stanza of 2 lines. A tercet is a stanza of 3 lines. A quatrain is a stanza of 4 lines, etc. So we're going to be writing in couplets. So that means we're always going to be writing, when we're doing a ghazal, we're always going to be writing in groups of 2 lines. So if you take a look at the pink example sheet, you can see what one of these looks like. So on that pink example sheet, you've got, we'll look at the first one, the Ghazal in Silence, the Mimi Calvati one. And you'll see that there's a bunch of stanzas, all are 2 lines. You'll also notice that in the second line of each, in the second line of each couplet, the last word is the same in all of them, and that's called a refrain, even though it's only 1 or 2 lines long. So let's just read this and just hear what it sounds like. All right. Follow along, please, and then we're going to talk about, and then we'll just talk about kind of how it works. All right. Ghazal in Silence by Mimi Calvati. Let them be, the battles you fought in silence. Bury your shame, the worst you thought, in silence. At last my beloved has haggled with death. One more day was the pearl she bought in silence. At night she heard the blacksmith hammering chains. At dawn the fretwork wrought in silence. The only wrong I've done is to live too long. My beloved's eyes tell the court in silence. She's as young as the month of Ordibestate, month of birth, spring's mid-leap caught in silence. My beloved, under the shade of a palm was the girl, the mother I sought in silence. Loneliness is innumerate. Days slip by, suns rise that daylight moons distort in silence. The bell on her wrist was silent, her fingers ice cold as the julep she brought in silence. Mimi June, my beloved's voice climbs 3 steep notes for tears to thwart in silence. 3 syllables of equal weight, equal stress, dropped in a well, keep falling short in silence. You can do your snaps now. Okay. So, one of the things that you probably noticed is you can really hear that repeated refrain, the way that in silence comes back again and again. I think it really stands out and can be a really cool way to do this. The reason I want you to start with this one is because this is probably the easiest of the closed form poems that we're going to do, and so it's one that I think is pretty accessible. So, rules. First of all, you write everything in couplets, so every stanza needs to be 2 lines long. I'm going to ask that you have at least seven stanzas, at least 14 lines. You can do more if you want to, but at least 7 couplets, 14 lines. The first couplet is different than all the others. Both lines 1 and 2 of the poem end in whatever your refrain is going to be. So they end in that one word. It's not a rhyming poem, rather it's a repetition poem. And then every other stanza in that poem is going to have the second line of it ending with in silence, or excuse me, with whatever your refrain is. All right. Of course, have fun with these. It's a constraint. It constrains you to put to be forced to put things into a specific format. But I think that sometimes in that constraint, you end up coming up with something pretty interesting. So, what you're gonna do when you're ready to start writing is pull out this sheet. These are the drafting sheets, and there's one for each type of poem that we're going to do. Of course, you want to look at the ghazal page right now, okay? So you'll see there are 16 lines, so there are 16 lines listed here, and you're just going to fill in your poem right on this sheet. All right, so you'll write your first line here, then your second line. Remember, both lines 1 and 2 need to end with the same word. And then you'll write line 3. It can end with any word you want, but line 4 needs to rhyme with that, needs to be the same, end with the same word as did lines 1 and 2. Same with this couplet, this one, and all the way down. All right, so you'll end up filling up most of the sheet. All right. That's about all I have for you today. Have fun with this. Try writing a couple of them and enjoy. All right. Thank you.